You get up after the first hit. You get up after the second. But somewhere around the third or fourth time you are knocked down, a question starts forming that you might be afraid to say out loud. What if I am simply not built for this? A farmer named Wen lived that question. He had worked his land since he was old enough to hold a tool, keeping his younger siblings fed after burying his father. He stayed standing through all of it until the rains failed for 2 years. A sickness wiped out the last of his savings. Finally, his wife left, quietly, the way a person leaves a house that has been cold for too long. Wen sold whatever remained and walked for 4 days into the hills. He arrived at a small temple run by a master named Sifu Liang. He didn't go there seeking wisdom. He went because he had no other direction left to walk in. Wen had survived. His body had made the journey, and he was still physically standing when the master opened the gate. But inside, he was completely empty. At the temple, one student immediately caught Wen's attention. His name was Hao. Hao worked from first light until dark, completing every task without a single complaint or any expression that revealed what he felt inside. On Wen's third day, the students were repairing a wall. A heavy stone slipped from the upper scaffolding, dropping straight down and crushing Hao's foot. Hao sat on the ground, looked at his foot, then stood back up and continued working. That evening, Wen asked how he managed to feel nothing. Hao looked at him and said the stone hurt very much. Then he went back to eating his rice in silence. Wen carried that answer around for weeks. He couldn't understand how a person could experience that kind of sudden, painful impact, feel the full weight of it, and yet remain completely intact. The daily rhythm of the temple started doing something quiet to Wen. He chopped wood until his arms stopped shaking. He swept the same courtyard every morning. At first, it felt pointless, but the courtyard was always dirty when he started and clean when he finished. This small, predictable cycle gave him a sense of order he needed badly. There was also an older monk named Brother Shu, who noticed people without using words. On Wen's first night, Shu brought him a small bowl of warm rice without being asked. He didn't offer advice or ask questions. He just set it down and walked away, offering his presence instead of a lecture. Wen began to expect an arrival of a village farmer and his 8-year-old son, who brought vegetables to the temple every few weeks. The young boy would run ahead on the winding path and wait by the heavy gate, bouncing excitedly on his heels. Wen thought he was finally becoming strong again. Then the heavy rains returned, much harder than anyone had expected. For 6 endless days, the rushing water simply did not stop. The river rose and moved into the food storage room, ruining the rice and dried vegetables. 2 students looked at the damage and left the temple the next morning without saying goodbye. Wen stayed to clean and repair, but the cold and wet days after the flood were too much for Brother Shu's old body. He stopped leaving his room and 6 days later died quietly in the early morning. Sitting outside that evening, the emptiness returned to Wen, heavier than before because he recognized it. He told Sifu Liang he was leaving. He believed he was made of weaker material, and he had nothing left inside to get back up with. Sifu Liang listened without moving. Then he stood up, motioned for Wen to follow, and walked him down the hill to the edge of the fast-moving river. The master picked up a stone from the water and placed it in Wen's hand. It was perfectly smooth. And he picked up a stone that had been sitting on dry ground for years and placed it in Wen's other hand. It was rough, uneven, and sharp in small places. Sifu Liang explained that the river hits those stones every single day with the full weight of the current. The stones do not crack or ask the river to stop. They stay, and over a very long time, every rough edge is removed and every sharp place is worn down. The stone from dry ground was safe. Nothing hit it or challenged it, but it remained unfinished and sharp. People only reach for the river stone when they need something solid to hold, because it has been completely formed by the very thing that looked like it was trying to destroy it. Wen asked how long it took for a stone to become smooth. Sifu Liang dropped a handful of pebbles back into the current. He said it takes exactly as long as it takes. A stone only becomes smooth by staying in the water. The fast-moving river was the only mechanism capable of grinding away those rough edges. By staying in that current, the stones had become something completely reliable. Wen placed the smooth stone in his pocket and walked back up the hill. The next morning, Hao worked beside Wen in the courtyard. Hao admitted that he too had come to the temple after losing everything. 2 years earlier, he had stood at the river and thought about walking into it and never coming back. Hao told Wen that the stones still hurt when it fell on his foot. Ongoing pain was simply proof he was still subjected to the river's current. Later that morning, news reached the temple that the vegetable farmer had not survived the flood. His young son was sitting in the mud at the gate alone. Wen walked down to the gate and found the boy past crying, lost in a silence Wen knew well. Pain as a shared current. No one is truly invulnerable. They are all simply in the water together. Wen did not offer the boy platitudes or tell him to be strong. He simply sat down in the mud beside him. He kept his hand in his pocket, turning the smooth stone with his thumb, and stayed there until the boy fell asleep against his arm. Wen carried him inside and watched over him until light returned. He was no longer waiting for the current to stop before deciding to stay. He was still here, and that was the only answer his questions had ever needed. Wen sat there as a solid presence for a child who had lost everything. The years of hardship had not destroyed him. They had prepared him to be the thing others reach for when they need to stand. Resilience is not found on dry ground. It is the choice to remain in the water for one more day.